The afternoon sun was bright and warm as Colonel James Park drove through the quiet streets of his hometown. He had been away for 8 months on a classified mission overseas. Now he was finally back, wearing simple civilian clothes, a plain gray t-shirt and jeans. His black sedan was clean and polished, reflecting the sunlight as he drove. James was tired. The long flight home had left him exhausted, but he felt happy to be back. He thought about seeing his family soon. His mother would probably cook his favorite meal. His younger sister would want to hear all about his travels, though he could not tell her much about his work. That was the nature of military intelligence. He needed gas. The fuel gauge showed nearly empty. James spotted a familiar gas station ahead, the same one he had visited hundreds of times before joining the Army 20 years ago. He pulled into the station and parked next to a pump. The place looked almost the same as he remembered. A few other customers were there, filling their tanks or walking into the convenience store. James stepped out of his car and stretched. His muscles were stiff from the long journey. He swiped his credit card at the pump and began filling his tank. The smell of gasoline filled the air. Somewhere nearby, a radio played country music softly. Everything felt peaceful and normal. He did not notice the police cruiser that had turned into the gas station. The black and white car moved slowly through the parking lot. Behind the wheel sat Officer Derek Mitchell, a man in his early 40s with short brown hair and cold blue eyes. Mitchell had been a police officer in this town for 15 years. He had a reputation among some people in the community, though not a good one. Mitchell's eyes fixed on James. He saw a man with Asian features standing next to an expensive-looking car. Mitchell's jaw tightened. He did not recognize James, and in his mind, that meant something was wrong. Without any real reason, Mitchell felt suspicious. He made a decision that would change everything. The police cruiser pulled up directly behind James's car, blocking it in. The red and blue lights on top began flashing. James heard the chirp of the siren and turned around. His heart sank a little. He had not been speeding. He had not broken any laws, but he knew what this was. He had experienced it before. James took a deep breath and stayed calm. His military training had taught him to control his emotions, especially in difficult situations. He had faced armed enemies in combat zones. He had made life-or-death decisions under extreme pressure. A traffic stop should not be a problem, even if it seemed unfair. Officer Mitchell climbed out of his cruiser. His hand rested on his belt near his weapon. His face showed no friendliness at all. He walked toward James with heavy steps, his boots crunching on the concrete. His body language was aggressive, like he was approaching a dangerous criminal instead of a man pumping gas. "Let me see your ID," Mitchell demanded. His voice was harsh and cold. He did not say hello. He did not explain why he had stopped James. He just made his demand and waited. James kept his hands visible. He knew how these situations could go wrong. Too many stories in the news showed what happened when encounters between police and minorities turned bad. He spoke in a calm, respectful tone. "Good afternoon, officer. May I ask why you stopped me?" Mitchell's eyes narrowed. He did not like being questioned. "I said, show me your ID now." James nodded slowly. "I'm going to reach for my wallet in my back pocket. I'm telling you this so you know what I'm doing." He moved carefully, keeping his movement slow and clear. His hand went to his back pocket and pulled out his leather wallet. Inside were several cards, his driver's license, his military ID, his credit cards. He pulled out his driver's license and handed it to Mitchell. Mitchell barely looked at the license. He glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds, then looked back at James. His expression showed dislike and suspicion. The license showed James's name, address, and photo. Everything was legal and current, but Mitchell did not seem to care about any of that. "Step out away from your vehicle," Mitchell ordered. "Officer, I'm already out of my vehicle. I'm just pumping gas. Don't get smart with me. Move away from the car. Put your hands where I can see them." Other people at the gas station were starting to notice. A woman filling her van at the next pump looked over with concern. A teenager walking out of the convenience store stopped and watched. Someone pulled out their phone. James did as he was told. He stepped away from his car, his hands held slightly out from his sides, palms visible. The gas pump was still running, fuel flowing into his tank. He had done nothing wrong, yet he was being treated like a criminal. Mitchell circled around James, looking him up and down. His eyes went to the car, studying it carefully. It was a nice vehicle, newer and well-maintained. This seemed to make Mitchell even more suspicious. "Nice car," Mitchell said, but his tone made it sound like an accusation. "Where'd you get the money for a car like this?" James felt a flash of anger but pushed it down. He had earned his salary through 2 decades of service to his country. He had been shot at. He had lost friends in combat. He had missed countless family events and holidays. He had earned everything he owned. But he knew that explaining this to Mitchell would not help right now. "I bought it with my salary, officer. Is there a problem?" "Where do you work?" Mitchell's questions came fast, one after another. "I work for the Department of Defense." Mitchell's expression showed disbelief. "Doing what? Cleaning offices?" The insult was clear. James felt his jaw tighten, but his face remained calm. Years of military discipline kept his emotions in check. He would not give Mitchell an excuse to escalate this situation. "I serve in the United States Army," James said quietly. "I'm stationed at—" "Sure you are," Mitchell interrupted with a sneer. "Let me guess, you're a general or something?" James said nothing. He had learned that sometimes silence was the best response. More people were watching now. He could see phone cameras pointed in their direction. At least there would be witnesses to whatever happened next. Mitchell walked over to James's car and peered through the windows. "I'm going to need to search this vehicle." "Am I being detained, officer? Or am I free to go?" "You're not going anywhere until I say so." "Then I'm being detained. May I ask what crime you suspect me of committing?" Mitchell's face turned red. He was not used to people knowing their rights. He was not used to being questioned, even politely. His hand moved closer to his weapon. "I don't like your attitude. Step over here and put your hands on your vehicle." James's mind raced. This was going wrong, getting worse by the second. He had done nothing illegal. He was being profiled and harassed for no reason, except the color of his skin and his appearance. But he also knew that arguing with Mitchell right now could be dangerous. Behind Mitchell, the teenager with the phone held it steady, recording everything. The woman at the next pump had stopped what she was doing completely, watching with wide eyes. Inside the convenience store, the clerk had come to the window to see what was happening. James made a decision. He would comply. He would stay calm, and he would let this play out. He had survived worse than Derek Mitchell. He had faced actual enemies who wanted him dead. He could handle one small-town cop on a power trip. But as he moved toward his car, placing his hands on the warm metal of the hood, James felt something he rarely felt. A deep sense of disappointment in the country he had spent his life defending. James stood with his hands on the hood of his car, feeling the warm metal beneath his palms. The sun beat down on his back. Officer Mitchell stood behind him, and James could hear the man's heavy breathing. The situation felt surreal. Just 10 minutes ago, he had been peacefully filling his tank. Now he was being treated like a criminal. Mitchell keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I've got a suspicious individual at the Quick Stop on Main Street. I'm going to need backup." James closed his eyes for a moment. Backup. That meant more officers, more complications. This was spinning out of control fast. He heard the dispatcher's voice crackle back through Mitchell's radio, confirming that units were on their way. "Officer, I still don't understand what I'm suspected of doing," James said, keeping his voice level and calm. "You haven't told me why you stopped me." "You fit a description," Mitchell said quickly. "There was a robbery last week. Asian male, dark hair, expensive car." James almost laughed, but he knew that would be a mistake. The description Mitchell had just given could fit thousands of people. It was so vague it was meaningless. This was clearly an excuse made up on the spot. But James said nothing. He simply waited. The woman at the next pump finished filling her van and walked over. She was in her 60s with gray hair and glasses. Her face showed concern and courage. "Officer, I've been watching this whole thing." "This man hasn't done anything wrong. He's just getting gas." Mitchell turned to her sharply. "Ma'am, step back. This is police business. I'm a citizen and a taxpayer. I have a right to observe. If you don't step back, I'll charge you with interfering with the police investigation." The woman looked like she wanted to argue more, but she slowly backed away. However, she did not leave. She stood by her van watching everything. Her phone was out now too, recording. James appreciated her attempt to help, but he did not want anyone else getting in trouble because of him. "It's okay, ma'am." "Thank you," he called to her. Mitchell moved closer to James. I smell marijuana coming from your vehicle. I'm going to search it now." James knew this was a lie. He had never used marijuana in his life. Random drug tests in the military made sure of that. His car was clean, but he also knew that claiming to smell drugs was a common excuse officers used when they wanted to search without permission. "Officer, I do not consent to a search of my vehicle. You do not have probable cause." Mitchell's voice became angry. "I just told you I smell drugs. That's probable cause." "No, officer, it's not. Not without additional evidence. You're making a false claim to justify an illegal search. I know my Fourth Amendment rights." The mention of constitutional rights seemed to make Mitchell even angrier. His face was getting redder. James could feel the tension rising. This was a dangerous moment. An angry cop was an unpredictable cop. 2 more police cruisers pulled into the gas station, their lights flashing. James heard car doors opening and footsteps approaching. More officers meant more witnesses, which could be good or bad. It depended on what kind of officers they were. "What have we got, Derek?" a voice asked. "Suspicious individual refusing to cooperate, possible drugs in the vehicle," Mitchell said quickly. James turned his head slightly to see who was speaking. It was another officer, younger than Mitchell, with a serious expression. Behind him stood a female officer, also young. She had dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Has he been aggressive?" the female officer asked. Her voice was more measured than Mitchell's. "He's been questioning everything I say, talking back, acting belligerent." James spoke up, his voice calm and clear. "Officer, I have been completely cooperative. I have not raised my voice. I have not been aggressive in any way. I simply asked why I was being stopped, which is my legal right." The female officer stepped closer. Her name tag read Chen. She looked at James carefully, then at Mitchell. James could see her mind working, processing the situation. Her eyes moved to the people recording on their phones, then back to Mitchell. "Derek, what was the initial reason for the stop?" Officer Chen asked. He looked suspicious. "That's not a reason for a stop." "Did you observe a traffic violation?" "Did he match a specific bolo?" Bolo meant be on the lookout. James knew the term well. It meant a specific description of a suspect, usually detailed. Mitchell shifted his weight. "I told you, he fits the description from last week's robbery." "What robbery?" Chen asked. "I don't remember any robbery last week. There was one." "Check the reports." Chen pulled out her phone and tapped on it. She was checking the department's database. After a moment, she looked up. "Derek, there's no robbery report from last week matching this description. The only robbery we had was 3 weeks ago, and that suspect was already arrested. He was a white male in his 20s. Mitchell's face went from red to pale. He had been caught in a lie. James felt a small spark of hope. Officer Chen seemed to be an honest cop, someone who cared about the truth. "Maybe I got the dates mixed up," Mitchell muttered. "Maybe you did," Chen said, and her tone suggested she did not believe him at all. The crowd watching them had grown larger. People coming in and out of the convenience store stopped to watch. More phones were out. James could hear people talking among themselves, their voices carrying on the wind. "This is messed up," someone said. "He's just profiling that guy." Somebody called the news. Mitchell heard the voices too. He looked around at all the witnesses and seemed to realize he had an audience. But instead of backing down, he seemed to dig in deeper. Some people, when they knew they were wrong, doubled down on their mistakes. "I'm going to pat him down for weapons," Mitchell announced. Officer Chen spoke up again. "Derek, do you have reason to believe he's armed and dangerous?" "I'm conducting a Terry stop. I have the right to check for weapons if I feel threatened." "Do you feel threatened?" Chen asked. "Because he's just standing there with his hands on his car." Mitchell ignored her. He stepped behind James and began a rough pat-down. His hands were not gentle or professional. He was aggressive, pushing and prodding. James gritted his teeth and endured it. He knew Mitchell was trying to provoke a reaction. If James pulled away or complained too much, Mitchell could claim he was resisting. Mitchell's hands went through James's pockets. He pulled out James's wallet again, the same one he had already seen. This time he opened it fully and started going through it. James watched in the reflection of his car window. There were credit cards, some cash, a photo of his family, and there, behind his driver's license, was his military ID. It was a standard Department of Defense identification card. On it was James's rank, clearly printed, Colonel, United States Army. Mitchell pulled out the military ID and glanced at it. James watched his reflection in the car window. This was the moment. Mitchell would see the rank and realize his mistake. Everything would change now, but Mitchell barely looked at the card. He saw the Department of Defense seal and the word Army, but his eyes did not focus on the rank. Or maybe he saw it and did not understand what it meant, or maybe he did not care. "So you are in the military," Mitchell said, probably some low-level grunt. "That doesn't impress me." James felt his hopes sink again. Mitchell had seen the ID and completely missed or ignored what it meant. The other officers had not seen it yet. They were standing several feet away. Mitchell tossed the wallet onto the hood of the car. Cards scattered slightly. He continued his search, checking James's waistband, his ankles, even his socks. He found nothing, of course. No weapons, no drugs, nothing illegal at all. "Derek, this seems like enough," Officer Chen said. "He's clearly not armed. His ID checks out. Maybe we should let him go and finish getting his gas." "I'm not done here," Mitchell snapped. "I want to search the vehicle." "He refused consent and you don't have probable cause," Chen argued. "You said you smelled marijuana, but I don't smell anything. Neither does Williams." She gestured to the third officer, who shook his head in agreement. "Are you questioning my judgment, Chen?" "I'm questioning this stop, yes." The gas pump clicked off. James's tank was full. Under normal circumstances, he would have put the nozzle back, gotten his receipt, and driven away. Instead, he was still standing here, hands on his car, being treated like a criminal in front of a growing crowd of witnesses. A man in the crowd spoke up. "Hey, officer, how about you let him go? He hasn't done anything wrong." "Everyone stay back," Mitchell shouted at the crowd. This is official police business. But the crowd was not intimidated. More people were agreeing with the man who spoke up. James heard their voices. "This is wrong. He's just harassing that guy. Where's the crime?" Mitchell grabbed his radio again. "Dispatch, I need a supervisor at this location." Now a supervisor was coming. The situation was climbing up the chain of command. James wondered what would happen next. Would a supervisor see through Mitchell's actions and end this, or would they support their officer, even if he was in the wrong? James glanced at the Army decal on his rear window. It was clearly visible, a sticker showing the Army logo and the words "Proud to Serve." Mitchell had been standing right next to that window. How had he not seen it, or had he seen it and simply not cared? General Robert Hayes walked toward the scene with purpose. His eyes swept over the police officers, the crowd of witnesses, and finally settled on James. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, but he said nothing yet. He simply observed, taking in every detail. Officer Mitchell noticed the new arrival but did not recognize him. To Mitchell, he was just another civilian getting in the way. "Sir, you need to stay back. This is a police matter." Hayes stopped walking but did not step back. "I'm just passing through and saw the commotion." "What's going on here?" "Police business. Move along." Hayes looked at James, still standing with his hands on the car hood. That man doesn't look like he's causing any trouble. "What did he do?" Mitchell's patience was running out. "I said move along, sir. Final warning." Officer Chen stepped forward. She sensed something about this man that Mitchell was missing. "Sir, are you military?" Hayes smiled slightly. "I am. Retired, but yes, in what branch?" "Army. I was stationed at Fort..." He paused, looking at James again. "Wait, is that Colonel Park?" The words hung in the air like thunder. Officer Chen's head snapped toward James. Officer Williams, who had been standing quietly nearby, looked up sharply. Even Mitchell stopped what he was doing. "You know him?" Chen asked. "Know him? Colonel James Park is one of the finest officers I've ever served with." Hayes pulled out his own wallet and showed his military ID. Even though he was retired, he still carried it. The ID showed his rank clearly. Major General, United States Army. Mitchell's face went pale. Chen covered her mouth with her hand. Williams took a step back, his eyes wide. Hayes walked past Mitchell, who was too shocked to stop him. He approached James directly. "Colonel Park, what's happening here?" James finally lifted his hands from the car and turned around. He stood at attention and saluted. Hayes returned the salute crisply. Even in civilian clothes, even in this ridiculous situation, military protocol mattered. "General Hayes, sir. I was getting gas. This officer stopped me without cause and has been detaining me for approximately 20 minutes now." Hayes turned to face Mitchell. His expression was no longer friendly. "Officer, Did you just have a colonel in the United States Army standing on his car with his hands up like a common criminal? Mitchell tried to speak, but his mouth opened and closed without sound. He looked like a fish out of water. Chen stepped in quickly. Sir, I just arrived a few minutes ago. I've been trying to understand the situation. Officer Mitchell claimed there was probable cause for the stop. And what was that probable cause? Hayes asked. Mitchell finally found his voice. He looked suspicious. Expensive car, and he fit a description from a robbery. What robbery? Hayes's voice was sharp now, like a blade. There was a robbery. Last week, or maybe 3 weeks ago. Mitchell was stumbling over his words. There was no such robbery, Chen said quietly. I checked the database. Hayes looked at James. Colonel, were you speeding? Run a red light? Anything like that? No, sir. I pulled in to get gas. I was filling my tank when Officer Mitchell blocked me in and demanded my ID. Did you provide it? Immediately, sir. Driver's license and military ID. Hayes turned back to Mitchell. You saw his military ID? Mitchell nodded weakly. And what rank did it show? I don't know. I didn't really look. You didn't look? Hayes's voice rose slightly. You had a military ID in your hands and you didn't bother to read it. The crowd was silent now, everyone listening. Phones were still recording. This was getting interesting. Hayes walked over to where James's wallet lay on the car hood. The military ID was still there. He picked it up and held it up so everyone could see. This ID clearly shows Colonel James Park, United States Army. Colonel. That's an 06 rank for those who don't know military structure. This man has probably been serving since before you were a cop, Officer Mitchell. Mitchell had no response. His earlier confidence was completely gone. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Chen was looking at James with new eyes. Sir, I apologize. If I had known. You shouldn't need to know his rank to treat him with respect, Hayes interrupted. He should be treated fairly whether he's a general or a private or a civilian with no military connection at all. He paused. But since we're talking about rank, let me tell you about Colonel Park here. Hayes turned to address the crowd as much as the officers. Colonel Park served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He was in charge of intelligence operations that saved countless American lives. He has 2 Bronze Stars for valor and a Silver Star. He's been shot at, mortared, and nearly killed more times than I can count. And today he came home to his own country and was treated like a criminal while getting gas. James felt uncomfortable with the praise, but he said nothing. Hayes was making a point that needed to be made. General Hayes, I appreciate, James began. No, Colonel, let me finish. Hayes was angry now, truly angry. I've been retired for 3 years. I live about 50 miles from here. I was driving through to visit family. By pure chance, I happened to see this scene. What if I hadn't been here? What would have happened to you? It was a good question. James had wondered the same thing. Would Mitchell have arrested him on false charges? Would this have ended with James in handcuffs, taken to jail, charged with resisting arrest or some other made-up crime? Officer Williams, who had been mostly quiet, finally spoke up. General, I want you to know I just got here. I didn't know what was happening. If you had known what? Hayes challenged. If you had known he was a colonel, you would have treated him better? What about all the people who aren't colonels? Don't they deserve fair treatment too? Williams had no answer. A police sergeant's car pulled into the station. This was the supervisor Mitchell had called for. The sergeant got out, a man in his 40s with gray in his hair and a tired expression. He took one look at the scene. The crowd, the cameras, the general standing there, and James could see him mentally calculating how much trouble this was going to be. Someone want to tell me what's going on? The sergeant asked. Everyone started talking at once. Mitchell tried to explain his side. Chen gave her version. Hayes described what he had seen. James stayed quiet, letting everyone else speak first. The sergeant held up his hands. One at a time. General, with respect to your rank, I need to hear from my officers first. Hayes nodded. Of course, Sergeant. Mitchell went first. He told a version of the story that made him sound reasonable and James sound suspicious. He left out the part about lying about the robbery. He left out the part about not really looking at James's ID. He made it sound like he was just doing his job and James had been uncooperative. Chen told a very different story. She described arriving to find Mitchell conducting a pat-down without clear cause. She mentioned checking the database and finding no robbery report. She noted that James had been calm and polite throughout the entire encounter. Williams admitted he had not really seen much. He had just arrived as backup and did not know what started the situation. Then it was James's turn. He spoke calmly and clearly, giving facts without emotion. He described pulling in for gas, being blocked in by Mitchell's cruiser, being asked for ID and providing it immediately. He mentioned Mitchell's claim about smelling marijuana, which was false. He noted that he had refused consent for a search because there was no probable cause. The sergeant listened to everything. Then he looked at the crowd of witnesses. Did anyone else see what happened? The woman who had spoken up earlier came forward. I saw the whole thing, officer. That young man did nothing wrong. He was just getting gas. Your officer targeted him for no reason. The teenager with the phone spoke up. I got it all on video, sir. The whole thing, from the start. Other people in the crowd agreed. They had all seen the same thing. An innocent man being harassed by a cop on a power trip. The sergeant looked at Mitchell. Derek, step over to my car, now. Mitchell walked away with the sergeant, and they had a conversation that no one else could hear. But James could see the sergeant's body language. He was angry. His hands moved sharply as he spoke. Mitchell's head was down, his shoulders slumped. Hayes moved closer to James. You handled that well, Colonel. Stayed calm the whole time. Training, sir. You taught me that in Kandahar. Remember when we got stopped at that checkpoint by the Afghan police? Hayes smiled at the memory. I do. You kept your cool then, too. Probably saved us from a bad situation. I learned from the best, sir. Chen approached them. Colonel Park, General Hayes, I want to apologize again. This should never have happened. James looked at her. Officer Chen, you're not the one who should be apologizing. You tried to do the right thing. You questioned what was happening. That takes courage, she looked relieved. I just wish I had gotten here sooner. Maybe I could have stopped this before it went so far. You did what you could. The sergeant returned and Mitchell was not with him. James looked around and saw Mitchell sitting in the sergeant's car looking miserable. What are you going to do about it? Hayes asked directly. Morrison took a deep breath. Officer Mitchell is being removed from duty immediately. He'll be going back to the station with me. There will be a full investigation. I promise you that. Will he be fired? Someone in the crowd shouted. Morrison turned to address the crowd. That's not. The drive to the police station was short. James followed Sergeant Morrison's cruiser through the familiar streets of his hometown. General Hayes drove right behind him in his Crown Victoria. The three-vehicle convoy moved slowly through the afternoon traffic. James had been to this police station before, years ago. He remembered coming here as a teenager with his father after their car was broken into. The officers had been professional and helpful back then. He wondered if things had changed over the years, or if he had just been lucky that day. They pulled into the parking lot behind the station. It was a modest building, 2 stories of brick with the city seal above the main entrance. American and state flags flew on poles out front. Under other circumstances, James might have found it comforting to see those flags. Today they felt ironic. Morrison got out first and went inside through a back entrance. Mitchell was with him, walking with his head down. James and Hayes met at James's car. How are you holding up? Hayes asked. I'm fine, sir. Just ready to get this over with. You know the media is going to hear about this. Those videos are probably already online. James had not thought about that. Of course the videos would spread. Someone had probably already posted them on social media. By tonight this could be a news story. He felt tired just thinking about it. I don't want to be on the news, sir. You might not have a choice. This is the kind of story that gets attention. They walked into the station through the front entrance. The lobby was small and clean. A desk officer sat behind thick glass. Her name tag read, Officer Rodriguez. She looked up as they entered, and her eyes widened when she saw their faces. You're Colonel Park, she said. I just heard what happened. Word traveled fast in a police department. Everyone probably already knew about the incident at the gas station. Yes, ma'am, James said politely. I'm so sorry. That was wrong. What happened to you? Thank you. The captain wants to see you. He's on his way in now. Sergeant Morrison asked if you could wait in conference room B. I'll show you. She came out from behind the desk and led them down a hallway. The walls were covered with photos of officers, commendations, and notices. They passed several offices where officers stopped what they were doing to watch James and Hayes walk by. Some looked curious. Some looked embarrassed. No one said anything. Conference room B was small and plain. A long table dominated the center with chairs around it. There was a whiteboard on one wall and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. Rodriguez gestured for them to sit down. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be good," James said. Hayes nodded in agreement. Rodriguez left and returned quickly with 2 bottles of water. "The captain should be here in about 15 minutes. He's coming in from home." After she left, James opened his water and took a long drink. His throat was dry. The stress of the last hour was catching up with him now that the immediate danger had passed. Hayes sat down heavily in one of the chairs. 20 years you've served. 2 combat tours. You've put your life on the line for this country, and this is how you get treated. I'm not the only one, sir. This happens all the time. That doesn't make it right." "No, it doesn't." They sat in silence for a moment. James looked out the window at the parking lot. Regular people were going about their day, driving past, walking down the sidewalk. Life continued normally for everyone else. Only his world had been disrupted. The door opened and Officer Chen came in. She was carrying a notepad and looked professional but uncomfortable. "Colonel Park, General Hayes. I'm here to take your preliminary statements. The captain will speak with you separately when he arrives." "Of course," James said. Chen sat down across from them. "Colonel, I want to apologize again." "Officer Chen," James interrupted gently, "you've already apologized. You don't need to keep doing it. You did the right thing out there. You questioned what was happening. You checked the facts. That's what good police work looks like." She looked grateful. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." "What's going to happen to Mitchell?" Hayes asked directly. Chen chose her words carefully. "He's been suspended pending investigation. That's all I can really say right now. There's a process. Will that process be fair? Or will the department protect him?" "I can't speak for the department, sir. I can only speak for myself. And I'm going to tell the truth in my report." James believed her. He could see the integrity in her eyes. She was the kind of cop every community needed more of. Chen opened her notepad. "Colonel Park, can you walk me through exactly what happened from your perspective? Start from when you first pulled into the gas station." James went through the whole story again. Chen took detailed notes, stopping him occasionally to ask clarifying questions. What time did he arrive? What pump was he at? What were Mitchell's exact words? Had James said or done anything that could have been interpreted as aggressive? No, James answered to that last question. I was respectful the entire time. I know how these situations can escalate. I've been trained in de-escalation. Because of your military work? Yes, and because I've been in situations like this before. Not often, but enough times to know how to handle them. Chen looked sad. You shouldn't have to handle them at all. But I do, we all do. Every person who doesn't fit a certain profile has to learn how to survive encounters with police. That's just reality. Hayes added his account of what he had seen when he arrived. He described Mitchell's aggressive behavior, the way James had been standing with his hands on the car, the crowd of witnesses. General, what made you stop? Chen asked. I saw the police cars with lights flashing. I saw a crowd. I pulled in because I was curious. Then I recognized Colonel Park. We served together. I knew immediately that something was wrong. Had you seen Officer Mitchell's behavior toward Colonel Park before you recognized him? Yes, I saw a cop standing over someone who was clearly not resisting or fighting. I saw what looked like an abuse of power. That's why I approached. Chen wrote everything down. When she finished, she looked up at both of them. Thank you. This is very helpful. Your statements match what I observed and what the witnesses told Sergeant Morrison. What about the video from the witnesses? James asked. We're working on getting copies. The sergeant already contacted several of the people who were recording. They've agreed to send us the footage. The door opened again. This time it was a man in his 50s wearing civilian clothes, slacks and a button-down shirt. He had a captain's badge clipped to his belt. His face was serious and looked troubled. Colonel Park? General Hayes. I'm Captain Frank Lewis. He shook hands with both of them. His grip was firm, his hand steady. I came in as soon as I heard what happened. I cannot apologize enough. Captain, James said evenly. Lewis sat down at the head of the table. Officer Chen, thank you for taking their statements. Can you give me a moment alone with the Colonel and General? Chen nodded and left the room, closing the door behind her. Lewis looked at James for a long moment. Colonel, I've been the captain here for 8 years. In that time, I've tried to build a department based on integrity and respect. What happened to you today goes against everything I've tried to teach my officers. Then how did it happen? Hayes asked bluntly. That's what I'm going to find out. Officer Mitchell has been with us for 15 years. He's had complaints before, but nothing that resulted in serious discipline. How many complaints? James asked. Lewis hesitated. I can't get into specific personnel matters. Captain, those complaints are relevant. If Mitchell has a pattern of behavior, that shows this wasn't just a bad day. It shows the department knew about problems and didn't address them. Lewis looked uncomfortable but nodded. You're right, and that's going to be part of the investigation. I promise you, Colonel, this will be thorough. What does thorough mean? Hayes pressed. Will there be an independent review? Or will the police investigate themselves? There will be an internal investigation first. If warranted, we can bring in outside investigators. It's warranted, Hayes said flatly. I understand your concern, but please understand I can't prejudge the outcome. I have to follow procedure. James spoke up. Captain Lewis, I want you to know something. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm not trying to destroy anyone's career, but I am demanding accountability. What happened today was racial profiling. It was an abuse of power, and if I don't push for real consequences, it's going to happen to someone else. Lewis nodded slowly. You're right, and I respect that you're handling this through proper channels instead of just going straight to the media. The media already has it, Hayes said. Those videos are probably viral by now. Lewis rubbed his face with his hands. I figured as much. My phone's been ringing since I got the call about this incident. He looked at James. Colonel, would you be willing to meet with me and the chief tomorrow? He's out of town today, but will be back tomorrow morning. He's going to want to speak with you directly. I can do that. Thank you. I know you were on your way home when this happened. I'm sure your family is waiting. Lewis stood up. I won't keep you much longer. I just need you to sign your formal statement and then you're free to go. We may need to contact you again as the investigation continues. That's fine. Chen returned with typed versions of the... James woke up the next morning to the sound of his phone buzzing constantly. He had put it on silent before going to sleep, but now it vibrated against his nightstand every few seconds. Message after message, notification after notification. He picked it up and saw the screen filled with alerts. The videos from the gas station had exploded overnight. What had started with a few witnesses posting on their social media accounts had turned into something much bigger. News outlets had picked up the story. People were sharing it with angry comments. Hashtags were trending. James scrolled through his phone with growing discomfort. He saw himself standing at his car, hands on the hood while Officer Mitchell stood behind him. The angle made it clear how unthreatening James was. He was just a man in a t-shirt and jeans, but Mitchell treated him like a dangerous criminal. The comments under the videos ranged from supportive to angry to political. Some people thanked James for his service. Others used the story to make points about police reform or racial justice. Some defended Mitchell, claiming he was just doing his job. A few comments were outright racist, and James quickly stopped reading those. His sister knocked on his bedroom door. James, are you awake? There are reporters outside. He pulled back the curtain and looked out the window. Sure enough, 2 news vans were parked on the street. A reporter stood on the sidewalk with a cameraman, probably doing a live shot. How long have they been there? James asked through the door. Since about 6 this morning. Mom is freaking out. James got dressed quickly in a clean shirt and jeans. When he came downstairs, his mother was pacing in the living room, peeking through the curtains every few minutes. This is crazy, she said. Reporters on our street. The neighbors are asking questions. His father sat at the kitchen table reading news articles on his tablet. You're on the front page of every local news site. Some national outlets are picking it up too. James poured himself coffee and sat down. I didn't want this kind of attention. Too late for that. You're news now. His father looked at him seriously. What are you going to say? About what? To the reporters. To the police chief. To everyone who's going to ask you about this. James had been thinking about that question all night. I'm going to tell the truth. What happened was wrong. It needs to be addressed. But I don't want to be some kind of spokesman or activist. I just want to go back to my life. I don't think that's going to be possible, his sister said, looking at her laptop. People are calling you a hero. They're saying you're standing up against police racism. I'm not a hero. I just got harassed at a gas station. But you handled it the right way. You stayed calm. You knew your rights. And now you're following through with a complaint. That matters. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Captain Lewis. James answered. Colonel Park speaking. Good morning, Colonel. I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to confirm our meeting with the chief this morning at 10 o'clock. Would that still work for you? Yes, that's fine. Good. Also, I should warn you, there's significant media attention on this case now. We've had reporters calling all morning. If you want to avoid them when you come to the station, I can arrange for you to come in through a back entrance. Thank you. I'll take you up on that. One more thing. The chief asked if you would be bringing an attorney. You're welcome to have legal representation present. James had not thought about getting a lawyer. Do I need one? You're not being charged with anything if that's what you're asking. This is a voluntary meeting to discuss the incident and the investigation. But you have the right to have an attorney present if you want one. I'll come alone. After he hung up, his father spoke. Maybe you should get a lawyer, James, just to protect yourself. I don't need protection. I didn't do anything wrong. That's not the point. This is serious. The department might try to minimize what happened or pressure you to drop the complaint. James considered this. His father was probably right to be cautious. But James had spent 20 years in the Army dealing with bureaucracy, politics, and difficult situations. He could handle a meeting with a police chief. I'll be fine, Dad. If I feel like I need a lawyer later, I'll get one. At 9:30, James left the house. The reporters on the street immediately rushed toward his car, shouting questions. Colonel Park, how do you feel about what happened? Are you planning to sue? Do you think Officer Mitchell should be fired? James did not answer. He got in his car, backed out of the driveway carefully, and drove away. The news vans tried to follow him, but he lost them after a few turns. The drive to the police station felt different today. Yesterday, he had been a victim following a police sergeant. Today, he was a news story driving himself to a meeting that could determine the outcome of this whole situation. He called General Hayes. The general answered on the first ring. Colonel Park, I was going to call you this morning. Have you seen the news? Yes, sir. It's everywhere. How are you handling it? I'm okay. I have a meeting with the police chief in 20 minutes. Do you want me there? James appreciated the offer. I think I should do this alone, sir. But thank you. Call me after. Let me know how it goes. I will. James arrived at the police station at 9:50. He drove around to the back entrance as Captain Lewis had suggested. Lewis was waiting there and led him inside through a door that bypassed the lobby. The chief is ready for you. His office is upstairs. They climbed a staircase to the second floor. The hallway here was quieter, with fewer officers around. They passed a few closed doors before stopping at one labeled, Chief of Police Daniel Martinez. Lewis knocked, and a voice called out, "Come in." Chief Martinez's office was larger than the conference room where James had been yesterday. A big desk dominated one side, with certificates and commendations covering the walls. Behind the desk sat Chief Martinez himself, a man in his early 60s with gray hair and a weathered face. He stood up as James entered. "Colonel Park, thank you for coming." Martinez came around the desk to shake James's hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. "Please, sit down." Captain Lewis sat in a chair by the wall. James sat across from the chief's desk. Martinez returned to his seat and studied James for a moment. "Colonel, I've been chief of this department for 12 years. In that time, I've dealt with a lot of difficult situations. But I have to tell you, what happened to you yesterday is one of the worst incidents I've encountered. I'm deeply embarrassed and angry." James said nothing, waiting to hear more. "I've reviewed Officer Chen's report. I've watched the videos that witnesses posted online. I've read your statement and General Hayes' statement. The evidence is clear. Officer Mitchell acted improperly. He racially profiled you. He conducted an illegal stop and search. He lied about probable cause, and he did all of this in front of witnesses and cameras." "Yes, sir. That's accurate." Martinez leaned forward. "Here's what I want you to understand. This is not who we are as a department. Most of our officers are good people who serve this community with honor. But Mitchell is not one of them, and I take responsibility for not dealing with him sooner." "He's had complaints before?" James asked. Martinez hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, 3 formal complaints in the last 5 years. All involved accusations of racial profiling or excessive force. The investigations were inconclusive. There wasn't enough evidence to sustain the complaints. Or the investigations weren't thorough enough," James suggested. "You may be right about that. And that's something I need to look at closely. If we missed warning signs, if we gave Mitchell too many chances, then the department shares blame for what happened to you. Captain Lewis spoke up from his chair. Chief, I've been reviewing Mitchell's file. The complaints show a pattern. Different victims, but similar circumstances. Traffic stops without clear cause. Aggressive behavior, claims of probable cause that don't hold up. Martinez rubbed his temples like he had a headache. Why wasn't this caught before? The complaints came from different neighborhoods. Different supervisors handled each investigation. No one connected the dots until now. James listened to this exchange with interest. It sounded like the department was genuinely looking at systemic problems, not just one bad officer. That was encouraging. Martinez turned back to James. Colonel, I want to tell you what we're doing. Officer Mitchell has been suspended without pay. The investigation into yesterday's incident is ongoing. Additionally, I'm ordering a review of all his previous stops and complaints. If we find a pattern of misconduct, that will factor into the disciplinary decision. What kind of discipline are we talking about? Everything is on the table, including termination. But I have to follow proper procedure. Mitchell has union representation. There's a process for discipline that involves hearings and appeals. I can't just fire him without going through the steps. How long will that take? James felt frustrated. Months? Meanwhile, he keeps his job and his benefits. He's suspended without pay. Martinez reminded him. He's not working or getting paid. But yes, the process takes time. I wish I could move faster, but my hands are tied by the union contract and civil service rules. What about the other officers? Officer Chen and Officer Williams? They're not under investigation. Chen's report actually supports your account and shows she tried to intervene. Williams arrived late and 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of investigation, media coverage, and waiting. James tried to return to some kind of normal routine, but normal seemed impossible now. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. Some thanked him. Others wanted to tell him their own stories of police encounters. A few were hostile, accusing him of trying to hurt good police officers. The videos from the gas station had been viewed millions of times. News programs discussed his case. Civil rights organizations reached out asking him to speak at events. Lawyers called offering to represent him in a lawsuit against the city. It was overwhelming. James had declined most interview requests. He gave one carefully worded statement to a local reporter, thanking the community for their support and expressing hope that real change would come from this incident. That was all he wanted to say publicly. He was not a spokesman. He was just a soldier who wanted to get back to his life. But getting back to his life proved difficult. The Army had given him extended leave to deal with the situation. His commanding officer had called personally to express support and offer any resources James needed. The military was protective of its own, especially when a soldier was mistreated. General Hayes called every few days to check on him. They met for coffee once, and Hayes shared stories of his own experiences with discrimination during his career. It never really goes away, Hayes had said. You just learn how to deal with it better. Today, James was going back to the police station. The investigation was complete. Chief Martinez had called yesterday asking James to come in for a meeting to discuss the findings. Captain Lewis would be there too, along with the outside investigator from the state police. James dressed carefully in civilian clothes but made sure he looked professional. He wanted to be taken seriously. As he drove to the station, he felt nervous. What would the investigation find? Would there be real accountability, or would this be a whitewash? He used the back entrance again. The media attention had died down somewhat, but there were still reporters who would jump on any new development in the story. Lewis met him at the door and led him upstairs to a conference room. Chief Martinez was already there, along with a woman James had not met before. She was in her 40s, wearing a state police uniform with detective insignia. She stood and extended her hand. Colonel Park, I'm Detective Lieutenant Maria Santos. I conducted the independent investigation into your incident. Lieutenant, James said, shaking her hand. They all sat down. Martinez looked tired, like he had not been sleeping well. Santos opened a thick folder full of documents. Colonel Park, I want to thank you for your patience during this investigation. Santos began. I've spent the last 3 weeks reviewing evidence, interviewing witnesses, and examining Officer Mitchell's history with the department. I'm here to present my findings. James leaned forward. This was it. This was the moment that would determine whether justice would be served. First, regarding the incident at the gas station. The evidence is overwhelming and conclusive. Officer Mitchell conducted an illegal stop without probable cause. He racially profiled you based on your appearance. He falsely claimed to smell marijuana to justify a search. He was aggressive and unprofessional throughout the encounter. His actions violated department policy and your constitutional rights. James felt a sense of relief. At least the investigation recognized what had happened. Santos continued. However, what I found went much deeper than just one incident. When I started looking into Mitchell's history, I discovered a disturbing pattern. She pulled out several documents and spread them on the table. Officer Mitchell has been with this department for 15 years. During that time, he received 5 formal complaints, 3 more than what was previously disclosed. Those additional complaints were filed but not properly recorded in his personnel file. Martinez's jaw tightened. How is that possible? I'm still investigating that question. Chief, it appears that certain supervisors may have failed to properly document complaints, possibly to protect Mitchell or avoid paperwork. That's unacceptable, Martinez said. Santos nodded. Beyond the formal complaints, I interviewed dozens of people in the community. I found at least 20 additional incidents where people claimed Mitchell had harassed them, but never filed formal complaints. They didn't report it because they didn't think anything would be done. James thought about Marcus, the young man from the gas station. How many times had Marcus been stopped by Mitchell and said nothing? I also reviewed Mitchell's arrest records and traffic stop, Santos continued. The statistics are damning. 73% of his traffic stops involved minorities, in a town where minorities make up only 32% of the population. His use of force incidents were also disproportionately against people of color. Why wasn't this caught earlier? James asked. Martinez answered. Our data systems weren't tracking stops by race until recently. The information was there, but no one was analyzing it. That's changing now. Santos pulled out another document. I also found evidence that Mitchell made inappropriate comments about race in the presence of other officers. 3 officers came forward confidentially to report that Mitchell frequently used racial slurs and made derogatory comments about minorities. They witnessed this but never reported it formally because they feared retaliation. Officer Chen mentioned that others were coming forward, James said. Chen was the catalyst, Santos confirmed. Once she filed her report supporting your account, other officers felt safe enough to speak up. Her courage opened the floodgates. Martinez looked at Lewis. We need to recognize Chen for this. She did the right thing when it wasn't easy. Santos continued with her presentation. Based on all of this evidence, my recommendations are as follows. Officer Mitchell should be terminated immediately. He should never be allowed to work in law enforcement again. Furthermore, I recommend criminal charges for civil rights violations and filing false reports. James had not expected criminal charges. Will the district attorney pursue that? I've already forwarded my findings to the DA's office. They're reviewing it now. No promises, but the evidence is strong. What about the supervisors who failed to properly document complaints? James asked. That's still under investigation. If I find evidence of intentional misconduct, I'll recommend discipline for them as well. At minimum, they need retraining on proper complaint handling procedures. Martinez spoke up. Colonel Park, based on Detective Santos's investigation, I'm moving forward with termination proceedings against Officer Mitchell today. His union will fight it and there will be hearings. But I'm confident we have enough evidence to sustain the termination. How long will that process take? James asked. Probably a month or 2. But he'll remain suspended without pay throughout. Santos added, I also recommend comprehensive policy changes for the entire department, better training on implicit bias, a new early warning system to flag officers with patterns of complaints, regular audits of traffic stop data, and an independent civilian review board to investigate complaints. We're implementing all of those recommendations, Martinez said. Some are already in progress. Others will take time to set up properly, but I'm committed to making them happen. James looked at both of them. This is more than I expected. I appreciate the thoroughness of the investigation. Santos smiled slightly. Colonel, you made my job easier. The incident was well documented with multiple witnesses and videos. In many cases of police misconduct, it's one person's word against an officer's. This time, the truth was undeniable. What about compensation? Lewis asked. The city's legal department is prepared to offer a settlement. James had been thinking about this. He did not want money for himself. Any settlement should go toward programs that help communities deal with police misconduct. Legal defense funds, community oversight programs, things like that. Martinez looked surprised. Are you sure? You have a strong civil rights case. You could get a significant settlement. I'm sure. I don't want to profit from this. I want to use it to help others. Santos looked at him with respect. That's honorable, Colonel. They spent another hour going over details. James signed some documents acknowledging he had been briefed on the investigation findings. Martinez confirmed that James would receive written copies of all reports. Santos provided her contact information in case James had questions later. As the meeting was wrapping up, there was a knock on the door. Captain Lewis opened it, and Officer Chen stood there looking nervous. Chief, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation downstairs you should know about. What kind of situation? Officer Mitchell is here. He's demanding to speak with you. He's pretty agitated. Martinez and Santos exchanged glances. He's not supposed to be at the station while he's suspended, Martinez said. I know, sir. But he's here anyway. He's in the lobby making a scene. James felt tension return to his shoulders. He had not seen Mitchell since the gas station incident. He had no desire to see him now. But James shook his head. No, Chief, I'm not hiding. If Mitchell wants to say something, he can say it. Colonel, that might not be wise. He's been suspended, he knows he's about to be fired, and he's apparently angry. This could get ugly. I've faced worse than an angry cop, see? 6 weeks after the gas station incident, James sat in a hearing room at City Hall. The formal disciplinary hearing for Officer Derek Mitchell had finally arrived. The room was set up like a small courtroom, with a long table at the front where 3 arbitrators sat. Mitchell sat on one side with his lawyer and union representative. On the other side sat representatives from the police department and the city's legal team. James was there as a witness. He had been subpoenaed to testify about what happened that day. General Hayes sat next to him in the gallery, along with Officer Chen and several other witnesses. The room was full of people, reporters, community activists, other police officers. Everyone wanted to see how this would end. The head arbitrator, a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Foster, called the hearing to order. This is a disciplinary hearing regarding Officer Derek Mitchell, badge number 2847. The city seeks termination based on charges of racial profiling, illegal search and seizure, filing false reports, and conduct unbecoming an officer. Mitchell's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Robert Brennan, stood up. Your Honor, we're here to contest those charges. Officer Mitchell has 15 years of dedicated service to this community. He's received commendations for bravery. He's been a good officer who made one mistake, a mistake that's been blown out of proportion by media attention and political pressure. Chief Martinez testified first. He explained the investigation, the findings, and why the department was seeking termination. He presented the statistics showing Mitchell's pattern of disproportionate stops of minorities. He showed documentation of the 5 formal complaints and the 20 additional incidents discovered during the investigation. Brennan cross-examined aggressively. Chief Martinez, isn't it true that Officer Mitchell never actually arrested Colonel Park? That's correct. And Colonel Park was never charged with any crime? No, he wasn't. So at worst, this was a bad traffic stop. Does every bad traffic stop result in termination? This wasn't just a bad traffic stop. This was racial profiling and a violation of constitutional rights. According to whom? According to Colonel Park's interpretation, according to the media mob that's been calling for Mitchell's head, Martinez stayed calm. According to an independent investigation conducted by a state police detective. According to multiple witnesses. According to video evidence. When it was time for James to testify, he was sworn in and took his seat at the witness table. Brennan stared at him like he was trying to intimidate him. James stared back without emotion. He had been interrogated by enemy intelligence officers. A defense attorney did not scare him. The city's attorney, a woman named Jennifer Kim, asked James to describe what happened that day. He went through the whole story again, calmly and clearly. He described Mitchell's aggressive behavior, the false claim about smelling marijuana, the rough pat-down, Mitchell's failure to properly examine his military ID. When Kim finished, Brennan stood up for cross-examination. Colonel Park, you're a military officer. You're trained in combat, correct? I'm an intelligence officer, but yes, I've had combat training. So you know how to fight? Yes. Officer Mitchell is a smaller man than you. Isn't it possible he felt threatened by your physical presence? James kept his voice even. I was standing calmly at a gas pump. I made no threatening movements. I complied with every instruction Officer Mitchell gave me. But you questioned him, didn't you? You asked why you were being stopped? I asked a legal question about the reason for the stop. That's my constitutional right. Some officers might interpret that as challenging their authority. Then those officers need better training. Asking questions is not a threat. Brennan switched tactics. Colonel Park, isn't it true that you've received significant media attention from this incident? You've become something of a celebrity, haven't you? I didn't seek media attention. I filed a complaint through proper channels, but you've benefited from the attention. Speaking opportunities, profile in the community. This incident has raised your public profile considerably. James felt anger flash through him but controlled it. I've spent 20 years serving my country in relative obscurity. I never wanted public attention. What I wanted was to fill my gas tank and go home to my family. Officer Mitchell took that simple moment and turned it into a nightmare. I did not benefit from that experience, Brennan pressed on. You're asking this panel to end a man's career. To take away his livelihood over what? A traffic stop where nothing actually happened? You weren't arrested. You weren't charged. You weren't even detained for very long. James looked at Brennan, then at the arbitrators. This isn't about one traffic stop. This is about a pattern of behavior that Officer Mitchell has exhibited for years. I'm one person who happened to have witnesses and cameras. But how many others did he harass who had no proof? How many people had their constitutional rights violated by this officer? You don't know that. The investigation found 20 additional victims, James interrupted. The statistics show clear racial bias in his stops. This isn't about me. This is about accountability for an officer who abused his power repeatedly. Brennan tried a few more questions, but James remained calm and consistent. Finally, the lawyer sat down, looking frustrated. Officer Chen testified next. She described arriving at the scene and immediately sensing something was wrong. She talked about checking the database and finding no robbery that matched Mitchell's description. She mentioned trying to get Mitchell to back down to no avail. Brennan went after her too. Officer Chen, you're a junior officer, correct? Less than 3 years on the force? That's correct. And you felt comfortable questioning a senior officer with 15 years of experience? I questioned his actions because they appeared to be wrong. Rank doesn't matter when someone is violating policy. Or could it be that you were influenced by Colonel Park's rank? You saw he was a colonel and immediately sided with him? Chen shook her head firmly. I didn't know his rank until General Hayes arrived. I questioned Officer Mitchell's actions based on what I observed, not based on anyone's rank or status. But you admit you were trying to protect Colonel Park? I was trying to protect his rights. That's my job as a police officer, to protect people's rights, not violate them. The hearing went on for hours. Witness after witness testified. The gas station owner showed his security footage. 3 of the people who had filed previous complaints against Mitchell testified about their experiences. Detective Santos presented her investigation findings in detail. Mitchell himself took the stand in his own defense. He was dressed in a suit looking much different than he had in uniform. He insisted he had done nothing wrong. I saw a suspicious individual in an expensive car, Mitchell testified. Based on my 15 years of experience, something felt off. I conducted a lawful traffic stop to investigate. What specifically was suspicious? The city's attorney asked. Just a gut feeling. You develop instincts after years on the job. But you had no actual evidence of criminal activity? Not at that moment, no. But I smelled marijuana, which gave me probable cause to search. Multiple other officers testified they smelled nothing. The gas station owner testified he saw nothing suspicious. How do you explain that? I don't know what they smelled or didn't smell. I know what I smelled. Officer Mitchell, do you recognize that Colonel Park is Korean American? I don't see race. I treat everyone the same. Yet 73% of your traffic stops involve minorities. That's just coincidence. I stop people based on behavior, not race. The city's attorney showed the video from the gas station. Mitchell was forced to watch himself being aggressive with James, ignoring his military ID, conducting a rough pat-down. Seeing it played out on the large screen made it clear how unreasonable Mitchell's behavior had been. Does that look like professional police work to you? The attorney asked. Mitchell's jaw tightened. I was doing my job under difficult circumstances. What was difficult about a man pumping gas? Mitchell had no good answer. When the testimony portion ended, both sides made closing arguments. Brennan painted Mitchell as a dedicated officer, being sacrificed for political correctness. The city's attorney argued that Mitchell had repeatedly violated citizens' rights and needed to be removed from law enforcement. The arbitrators said they would deliberate and announce their decision in 1 week. Everyone filed out of the hearing room. James felt drained. Reliving the incident over and over had been exhausting. Outside City Hall, a crowd had gathered. Some held signs supporting James. Others held signs supporting Mitchell and the police. The two groups shouted at each other across the plaza. Justice for Colonel Park. Back the blue. End police racism. Don't let the media destroy good cops. General Hayes put a hand on James's shoulder. Want to slip out the back? James looked at the crowd. He saw people who genuinely believed in police accountability, standing near people who genuinely believed in supporting law enforcement. Both groups thought they were right. The divide felt enormous. No, James said. I want to say something. I'm going to make one statement and then I'm not taking questions, James said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The crowd went quiet. What happened? 2 months after the arbitrator's decision, James stood at a podium in the police academy training room. Rows of new recruits sat before him, young men and women who had just started their journey in law enforcement. They looked eager and nervous, the way all new recruits did. Chief Martinez had asked James to speak to each new class of officers about his experience and what it meant for professional policing. This was the third class James had addressed. It never got easier, but he knew it was important. Good morning, James began. My name is Colonel James Park. Some of you probably know who I am from the news. 2 months ago, I was racially profiled and illegally detained by a police officer in this town. That officer has since been fired and is facing criminal charges. I'm here today not to criticize you or make you feel bad about choosing law enforcement as a career. I'm here to challenge you to be better. The recruits listened intently. Some looked uncomfortable. Others nodded. When I was standing at that gas station with my hands on my car, I wasn't thinking about the officer's career or the media or making a statement. I was just thinking about survival. I was thinking about my mother and how she would feel if something happened to me. I was thinking about all the times I've been stopped or followed or treated with suspicion just because of how I look. He paused, letting that sink in. I spent 20 years in the Army defending this country. I've been shot at. I've lost friends in combat. I've made sacrifices that most people will never understand. And on what should have been a normal day, just filling up my gas tank, I was treated like a criminal. Not because of anything I did, but because of assumptions made about me based on my appearance. A young white recruit raised his hand. Sir, how do we avoid making those mistakes? I mean, we have to make quick decisions. How do we know we're not being biased? It was a fair question. First, recognize that everyone has biases, we all do. What matters is whether you let those biases control your actions. Second, ask yourself, would I be making this stop if the person looked different? If the answer is no, or if you're not sure, you probably shouldn't make the stop. An Asian female recruit spoke up. I've been stopped before too. When I told my friends I wanted to be a cop, some of them called me a traitor. They said I was joining the enemy. How do you deal with that? James looked at her with understanding. By being the kind of officer you wish had stopped you. By holding yourself and your fellow officers accountable. By remembering what it felt like to be on the other side of that interaction. Officer Chen entered the room and stood by the wall. She had been promoted to sergeant after her truthful testimony. Chief Martinez had recognized her integrity and courage. She gave James an encouraging nod. Some people think police reform means attacking all officers, James continued. That's not what I believe. Reform means supporting the good officers, and most of you will be good officers, while removing the ones who abuse their power. It means having systems in place to catch problems before they become patterns. He clicked a button on his remote, and a slide appeared showing statistics from the department's new accountability system. Since this incident, this department has made real changes. Every traffic stop is now logged with data on the driver's race. That data is reviewed monthly for patterns. Officers showing bias get additional training. Body cameras are now mandatory and must be on during all interactions with the public. And there's an independent civilian review board that investigates complaints. A black male recruit raised his hand. Sir, do you think things will really change? Or will people just find ways around the new rules? That depends on you, James said directly. Every one of you in this room will face moments where you have to choose between doing what's easy and doing what's right. You'll see other officers cutting corners or treating people unfairly. In those moments, you have to decide what kind of officer you want to be. He told them about Officer Chen, how she had questioned Mitchell's actions even though he was a senior officer. Sergeant Chen is a hero, not because she did anything dramatic, but because she told the truth when it would have been easier to stay quiet. That's the kind of courage good policing requires. Chen looked embarrassed by the praise but stood a little straighter. After James finished speaking, several recruits came up to ask questions and shake his hand. One young Hispanic man said quietly, "My brother was stopped by Officer Mitchell 3 years ago. Mitchell hassled him for 20 minutes for no reason. My brother was so angry he didn't want to report it. He said nothing would happen anyway. But you proved something can happen. You gave my brother hope." James felt emotion well up in his chest. "Tell your brother I'm sorry that happened to him. And tell him to report it if anything like that ever happens again. These systems only work if people use them." As James left the academy, Captain Lewis walked with him to his car. "The recruits really respond to you. You're making a difference. I hope so. But it's exhausting, Captain. I just wanted to get gas and go home. Now I'm some kind of symbol. Sometimes we don't get to choose what we become symbols for, but you're handling it with grace." James drove to the gas station where it had all started. He had avoided the place since the incident, always filling up somewhere else. But today he decided to face it. He pulled up to the same pump where he had been that day. The gas station owner, whose name was Ahmad, recognized him immediately and came rushing out of the convenience store. "Colonel Park, you came back. Please come inside. Coffee on the house. Anything you want. I just need gas, Ahmad." Of course. But please know, I've been following everything. What you did standing up like that, it inspired me. I filed a complaint about another officer who was harassing my customers. I never would have done that before. But you showed me that speaking up matters." James finished pumping his gas. This time no police cars pulled up. No one harassed him. It was just a normal transaction, the way it should have been the first time. He drove to the park where he had sat after his meeting with Chief Martinez, the place where the elderly woman with the dog had smiled at him. He sat on the same bench and thought about everything that had happened. Mitchell's criminal trial was scheduled for next month. The district attorney felt confident about getting a conviction. Even if Mitchell avoided jail time, he would have a criminal record. He would never work in law enforcement again. His career was over. But James thought about all the years Mitchell had been a cop. How many people had he harassed? How many lives had he affected? Why had it taken this long for him to face consequences? General Hayes had told him, "You can't fix everything that's broken. You can only do your part." James tried to hold on to that wisdom. He had done his part. He had filed the complaint. He had testified. He had worked with the Civilian Advisory Board. He had spoken to the recruits. What more could one person do? His phone rang. It was an unknown number. James almost declined it, but something made him answer. "Is this Colonel Park?" A male voice, young and nervous. "Yes, this is he. My name is Marcus. We met at the gas station. You told me to report it if something like that ever happened to me." James remembered. The young black man who had said he went through things like that all the time. "Of course, Marcus. How are you?" "I got pulled over yesterday. Different cop, not Mitchell. He said my taillight was out, which it wasn't. I think he was going to hassle me. But then he recognized me from the videos. He knew I was there when you got stopped. He checked my taillight, saw it was fine, and let me go. Just like that. That's good, Marcus, but here's the thing, he apologized. He said he was sorry for the false pretense. He said the department has new training and he's trying to do better. A cop apologized to me. That's never happened before." James felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe. "I'm glad, Marcus. That's what change looks like. Not perfect, but better. I wanted you to know that what you did mattered. People are paying attention now. Cops are being more careful. It's not fixed, but it's different." After they hung up, James sat for a long time watching the park. Children played on the playground. Dogs ran through the grass. People jogged on the paths. Life continued, normal and ordinary. But underneath that normalcy, small changes were happening. That evening, James attended a civilian advisory board meeting. The board was reviewing a new policy about how officers should conduct traffic stops. Every detail mattered: where officers should stand, how they should request identification, what constitutes reasonable suspicion. Reverend Williams led the discussion. We need to make sure officers are safe, but we also need to protect citizens' rights. It's a balance. They worked through the policy line by line, making suggestions. Chief Martinez sat in the meeting taking notes. He did not argue or dismiss their ideas. He listened. James suggested adding a requirement that officers state clearly why they're making a stop before requesting identification. If I had known from the beginning that Mitchell had no valid reason to stop me, it would have been clear that this was profiling. Officers should have to articulate their reasoning up front. The board voted to recommend the policy with James's addition. It would go to the city council next month for approval. After the meeting, James drove home. "Hismo,